Alrighty then. Hello there. My name is William, also known as Sir Aaron, and today I'm going to be doing some more Exalted lore reading. So you may have seen last week that I was streaming Exalted First Edition, looking at the lore in that. And so I think today I'm probably going to finish up that reading and then work out what to read next. So yeah, let me just get some links and share this with people, and then we'll begin. Cool. Okay. As with last time, I will not have any sort of music or anything like that on in the background. I don't think Google Hangouts even lets me do that anyway. So feel free to have some music on in the background or whatever. And if you hear like background noise and stuff, I apologize. I am at least using the correct microphone this week. Last week I was using my webcam's mic instead of my really good podcasting microphone. So yes. Oh, screen sharing. Yeah. There we go. All right. So this is Exalted First Edition, and I'll basically be picking up where I left off last time, which was just beginning to look at the sort of landscape lore. Everything from before that about all of the different Exalt types and yeah, everything prior to sort of the looking at specific locations is relatively the same as it is in second and third edition. There are some differences, which I discussed in the last video. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and read some more stuff. Let me just do one last thing. Oops. So professional, I know. I apologize. If you're watching on the VOD, just skip ahead. Okay. All right. Cool. So, yeah. Oh, I should check the stream quality as well. So professional. Stream status. Yes. Okay, good. Cool. Well, no one's watching this live anyway yet, so yeah, if you're watching on the VOD, just skip ahead. Okay, so yeah. The Realm. I think I started reading some of this towards the end of last stream, but I'll read it again. So, the realm. A majestic and decadent empire, the realm is nothing less than the hub of reality itself. A hallowed consensus governs the heart of the empire, keeping the unreal, the uncertain, and the unholy to the lands of the periphery. Also the hub of political reality, from the labyrinthine streets and towering spires to the imperial city to the last standing legions sent to secure the tribute from the threshold. The realm is the undisputed center of power in creation. Hey, weird and quirky. Hey, how's it going? Or at least it used to be, since the disappearance of the ruling empress 5 years ago. Usurping nobles, petty conquerors, and unruly tribes have picked apart the once unified hierarchy of the empire. For the dynasty, things have never been worse. For ambitious patricians waiting to seize power for themselves, the current instability gives them the perfect opportunity. The realm has known nothing but economic and political growth since its birth from the plague pits of the contagion. Now the empire crumbles, and the power that kept the world at bay ebb by the day. While a strong dynasty might have endured after the empress vanished, the dynasty's 11 houses have set upon one another, further destabilizing an already precarious situation. Who will control the realm? Scholars worry that the cycle is about to turn again, returning the realm to the dust from which it arose. The average citizen of the realm has white skin, black hair, and brown eyes. Full lips and strong noses are typical, and most men and women are nearly 6 feet tall when full grown. Builds are generally slim, but men tend to develop a paunch later in life. Bear in mind, however, that the realm is a conquering empire. Many of its inhabitants, even members of the Scarlet Dynasty, show signs of alien blood from foreign concubines. I feel like the white skin description has changed over the years. I feel like that's an older thing. I swear I remember reading that, like, people on the Blessed Isle normally have like brownish, like lightish brown skin. But whatever. This is interesting. This capital C cycle. Yeah. I always think of as just the general stereotype. Or a, what's the word? Like a natural inclination to just mentally replace the Blessed Isle with the whole of Asia. But yeah, I don't know. It doesn't really matter that much anyway. I tend to be quite lenient with like how people look in Exalted, at least when I run my games. Like, you can look however you want. Like, I really don't think race is a thing in the world of Exalted, not in the way it is in our world, at least, because the power structures at play between the various Exalt types are far more important than any like socio-political bullshit that happens with people who look slightly different from one another. Anyway, the Empire in decline. A coalition of exalted despots that ruled the realm in its infancy. The dynasts quickly rose to rank their power according to the size and prosperity of their estates or the magnitude of their charms. These noble families were as querulous as their modern counterparts in the dynasty. The authority of the empress was all that kept their ambitions in check. The Scarlet Throne enforced its rule by making it more expensive to rule the realm than it appears. What? The Scarlet Throne enforces its rule by making it more expensive to refuse the realm than to appease it. The Empress demanded only moderate payment from her tributaries and was swift to dispatch her legions to protect her vassals. Her tendency to send those same legions to rearrange local governments at the first sign of disloyalty resolved any lingering doubts her vassals may have had. Since her disappearance, the dynasty, through the decree of its figurehead regent, has increased tributes from the outlying provinces to outrageous levels. Barbarians and bandit raids along the tributary lords' faltering confidence in the empire sapped the imperial treasury. Even with the heavier tributes paid by the lords that remain loyal, 7 of the realm's legions have been decommissioned to compensate for the disruption of trade and tax revenues. While why pay the realm tribute when it offers no stability? Far better think some tributaries to cultivate their own power and grow stronger and richer without the interference of the realm. In theory, the realm still controls the Blessed Isle and the surrounding lands. In reality, it has much influence outside of the Isle as it has as much influence outside of the Isle as its legions allow it. A hierarchical system of leadership governs the realm from the smallest village to the imperial city itself. Imperial influence remains absolute on the Isle, but grows less sure farther away from the center. Places to come from in the realm. Huh, this is an interesting box. Is there more of these? Is there like one for the south and stuff as well? There is. Wait, spaces between the cities. Places to come from in the east. Yeah, okay, interesting. Huh, okay. So yeah, let's read this. I guess in later editions they just like interjected descriptions of the landscapes with the various cities. I guess they're doing it differently originally. Arjuf, the largest port in the realm, the city is the headquarters to the merchant navy as well as to countless merchant fleets and argosiers. Argosiers? Argosiers. I don't know what that word is. The Imperial City, the largest city in the world. The Imperial City is an unparalleled collection of wonders. It is the site of the Imperial Manse, which is both the palace of the regent and the headquarters of the Thousand Scales. That's not true. That's not true in later editions, at least. Well, okay, I guess if you say that like the Empress is the headquarters of the Thousand Scales, then in that sense, I guess the Imperial Manse or the Imperial Palace is also, I don't know. There's a whole district in second edition, at least. There's a whole district in the Imperial City devoted to the Thousand Scales. Lord's Crossing, a prosperous inland trading town. It's the 3rd largest city in the realm. Juche, a city at the foot of the Imperial Mountain, a laboring town. Juche is famous for its great quarries, some dating back to the First Age. Most of the stone used to build the Imperial City, along with most of the jade used to form the realm's coinage, is mined and carved here. The last 4 years have been excellent for Juche because all of the houses are repairing their fortifications. Huh, interesting. Juche has a small colony of mountain folk living in it who serve as their people's representative to the realm. And Chanos, a northern port city. Chanos is the military town, or is a military town. Most of the businesses in this town come directly or indirectly from the naval squadrons and marine legions based there. Because they payroll the troops who keep the city alive, Chanos is loyal to House Ragara. The majority of the realm's population lives in farming communities on the Blessed Isle, the largest of the various islands that constitute the heart of the realm. Oh, yeah, that's a connective. The majority of the realm's population lives in farming communities on the Blessed Isle, which is the largest of the various islands that constitute the heart of the realm. Yeah. Most of the cities on the realm line the coast, able to support large populations with their robust trade. Thanks to the Empress's efforts to promote trade, the inland trading center Lord's Crossing has become the third largest city in the realm. I think that changes in later editions. I think it's Imperial City, Chanos, Jutche, and Arjuf are larger, and then Lord's Crossing is like just behind. But that's semantics. Ruins for the first stage dot the landscape of the Blessed Isle, crumbling temples, shattered monuments, and buildings whose original function still confounds scholars. Peasants tend to avoid these places, thinking them blighted. Exalted, however, flock to them for the power they offer their owners. Dynasts claim these ruins and the power within them as soon as they're discovered. If too little of the original structure is left, an exalt usually arranges the construction of a manse on the site. Manses are batteries for essence. These buildings are designed according to immaculate principles that allow them to absorb and contain essence. Though the manses of the first stage were much superior, those of the modern day are adequate. The largest manse ever built is the Imperial Manse, a vast relic of the glory of the first stage. The Imperial Manse is followed closely by the Palace Sublime, the mother temple of the Order of the Immaculate Dragons. Though the dynasty controls many of these ancient places, some are beyond their grasp. Many are incomprehensible, or their defenses too mighty to be breached at an economical cost. Ruins in the Threshold, World, and Scavenger Lands present their own challenges. While most of the major domains in the tributary lands have been secured by the forces of the dynasty, many more lie unclaimed or stand as strongholds of beings inimical to the realm. That's interesting. That like in talking about the realm, one of the first things they mention here is that like there are first stage ruins all over the Blessed Isle, which is true in later editions as well, but they don't highlight it as much. And so you can, if you're not careful, I feel like it's easy to infer from some of the writings in second edition, at least, that like the Blessed Isle is empty when it's really, really not. The tributaries. Even Lord's Crossing's cartographers can't keep up with the fluctuating borders of the realm's overseas tributary states. The dozens of princedoms, potentiaries, dominions, estates, and plantations that pay homage to the realm constantly change hands through financial voodoo, inheritances, marriage, and border disputes. These tributaries, often called provinces or satrapies, rarely fought protracted wars with one another. The Empress quickly chose sides and dispatched legions to settle these disagreements in the past. However, such conflicts are more common at the moment, and the realm's weakness has become apparent. While some dragon-blooded of lesser bloodlines rule provinces, most tributary lords possess no such gifts. Lordship is usually inherited, though. In reality, most threshold thrones go to the individuals most likely to continue paying the realm its tribute. Though each lord is supposed to conduct the affairs of her holding in accordance with imperial law, the rules and sometimes even the customs change from province to province. Some are relatively liberal trading centers. In other places, the ruler's whim is the only law. Imperial law concerning tributaries covers only a few aspects of their governance. The realm is about acquiring power, not telling people how to use it. Each province pays some tribute to the realm in exchange for protection, but is expected to keep order within its borders. Imperial law used to be the most concerned with methods of tax collection and trade issues such as tariffs and currency. Recently, however, the lawmaking body of the realm has instituted many new regulations in order to avert insurrections in a variety of provinces. About a third of the current provinces are related through blood to the dynasty. The rest belongs to the lesser nobles. Wait, what? Really? About a third of the current provinces are related through blood to the. Okay. Yeah. For a second there, I thought that was saying that that only a third of dynasts had control, or that only a third of the satrapies were under the control of the dynasty, but that's not what it's saying. The rest belongs to lesser nobles, while the dynasty is obsessed with its own superiority, treating its vassals more like worshippers. These lords who are tied to the dynasty through marriage are treated less like second-class citizens than those who have only had their oaths of submission to tie them to the realm. Interesting. I'm already detecting a greater emphasis in this writing on what's it called? On political struggles, for lack of a better word. Like interpersonal stuff with the dynasts and the patricians and the satrapies. Like, some of the way that this is phrased is more evocative. It's like there's potential for stories here, whereas in second edition, if I recall, the way it's written there is more kind of matter-of-factly. Anyway, the Blessed Isle itself is administered directly by the realm rather than by subject kings. It is divided into prefectures, each administered by a prefect appointed by the empress, or in her absence, the deliberative. A governor appointed by the prefect oversees each town or city within the prefecture. A prefecture usually contains 10 to 12 farming villages and a walled city or two. Particularly large provinces called dominions are rare, but coveted positions. The prefect of Lord's Crossing, for example, is one of the most influential people in the realm. The governors collect taxes from citizens and portions of crops and materials from the peasants. The prefectures of the provinces in turn collect tribute from the governors. This tax farming system was largely administrative, as the realm was kept afloat primarily by tribute. But now, as the tribute wanes, the system is being forced to actually perform after centuries as a dumping ground for political appointees. The problems are especially evident in areas too sparsely populated to merit a governor. Isolated areas are instead usually visited by roving tax collectors. These bureaucrats, reviled even in the days of the Empress, are now meeting all sorts of cruel ends as they go about their duties in suddenly hostile landscapes. That's So I was about to say, or I said a few minutes ago that oh yeah, the Blessed Isle isn't actually that empty. It's covered with lots of towns and villages and ruins and manses and stuff from the first age that the peasants stay away from, which is in this bit here. But then here it's oh, it's sparsely populated, and there are certain provinces or certain prefectures where someone has to roam around and collect taxes. There's not like a station person in every town and stuff. And then here, a prefecture usually contains 10 to 12 farming villages and a walled city or two. Like, that doesn't seem right to me. Because, like, some of the prefectures are quite big. Obviously, there are some that are dominions and they're huge. But even something like the Scarlet Prefecture has a very large, like, square mileage, and I've run the numbers on like demographics of like areas like that. There's a great website called Donjon where you can come up with medieval demographics in certain square mileages of area, and like there's like 50 towns or something in the, or projected by Donjon, there's like 50 something towns in the Scarlet Prefecture alone. I think this is another instance of the writers of Exalted just having no sense of scale whatsoever. Anyway, hello, Tochio Oyama. Nice to see you. I'm slightly obsessed with the scale of this game. It's something that I've picked up on far too many times at this point. Like, writers just not understanding how large 100 square miles is and stuff like that. Anyway. So, what was the first stage like? All mortal and dragon-blooded scholars have to go on are the ruins left standing and the texts that survived the turning of the age. The cult of the Illuminated sees it as a golden age when the Solar Exalted brought the land enlightenment and harmony. The dragon-blooded see it merely as an older civilization than the one they had. The dragon-blooded see it merely as an older civilization than the one that has succeeded it, a civilization that had the time to mature and prosper. Most individuals, particularly those who follow the teachings of the Immaculate Order, venerate it as a long-lost paradise that will be reclaimed when the world is set aright. Interesting. Celestial Exalted who survived through the calamities remember the first age, but few of them are willing to share their memories. Some argue that the wisdom of the first age is not gone, but merely that the complex civilization that made the age possible has passed away. Others contend that the world changed irrevocably when the Great Contagion struck, and that even if the lore of the lost first age were reclaimed and put to use, it would mean little. So far, neither group is organized or determined enough to put their theories to the test. Thank you, Tochiro. Yes, I will. The scale of Exalted is epic. Yeah, it's almost too epic sometimes. I think it's hard to like mentally quantify, and I partially don't blame the writers for mucking stuff like this up. On the one hand, but on the other hand, I'm like, come on, guys, you obviously made the map this big for a reason, right? Like the Imperial Mountain is canonically 600 miles high for a reason, right? Speaking of the Imperial Mountain, at the center of the realm lies the greatest peak in the world, the Imperial Mountain. It is said to be the Axis Mundi and the Omphalos. Omphalos? Omphalos? I'm gonna look that up. I think this is a real word. Omphalos. A center or hub of something. Omphalos. What was that other word that I couldn't pronounce earlier? Argos, right? Argos. Argosius. Argosies. large merchant ship, originally from Ragusa or Venice. Huh. Omphalos, yeah. All right, I lost my place. Yeah, so it's the center of all things. It's the elemental pole of Earth, and it embodies that element's perfection, stability, and harmonious stasis. The Imperial Mountain can be seen from all across the Isle, and its profile serves as the seal and mon of the eternal, unfailing empire. All Imperial documents and monuments bear this seal. It is depicted on Imperial banners, and a huge version in iron and enamel looms behind the throne in the Imperial Manse. The Imperial Mountain is a holy place, and the forces of the elemental pole bring harmony and peace of mind to those who visit it. Many elderly aristocrats retire to its slopes, and many who seek spiritual perfection come to climb it and bathe in its holy radiance. That's an interesting one, that the Imperial Mountain in first edition is the Empire's Mon, because in second edition it's a 5-pointed star, and I don't know about third edition. I'm not sure which I like the idea of better. The Imperial Mountain is obviously like, you know, as they say, stability, and it's like imposing and stuff. Whereas the 5-pointed star shows unity between the 5 elements. They're both thematically appropriate. I think I prefer the 5-pointed star, though. All right, the Imperial City. Question. So since the solar deliberative city is on top of the mountain, right, how do you breathe at 600 miles altitude? What is the atmosphere of creation like? So many questions. Yeah, it's so dumb. I've thought about this a lot. Probably too much, but in fact, I even wrote some notes about this, because hopefully tomorrow I should have the free time to do like a big long video about the Blessed Isle. So I'll probably mention this again in that video, but let me just spoil a bit here. Where is it? The Imperial Mountain is officially supposed to be 600 miles high. And to put that in perspective, Mount Everest is 5.5 miles high. And Olympus Mons, the tallest mountain on Mars, is only 16 miles high. Like, if the Imperial Mountain was on Earth, it would have its own gravity. like it would break the atmosphere. Like, getting to the top, you would be in space. Like, there's I don't know why they made it 600 miles high, but apparently, like, you can get to the top of it and still breathe somehow. So the atmosphere, if you even want to call it that, I mean, stupid magic bullshit. You know, you can like hand wave it and not care, but yeah, I don't know. Part of me just thinks like they didn't think that through at all. Especially since, as you say, the solar deliberative city, Meru, the city of Meru, is supposed to be built. It's supposed to circumnavigate the top of the mountain, like the last sort of 100 miles or so from the top down, is supposed to be Meru. Like, how did they build? What? Like, so I prefer to imagine that Meru is like down on the slopes, like in a valley. If you look at my big Imperial, if you look at my big map of the Blessed Isle, I put it in a valley, like below the Imperial Mountain, or like to the south of the Imperial Mountain. That like makes more sense in my mind than putting it on the top. But yeah, as I say, I'll be making that video tomorrow, so you'll hopefully, if you watch that too, you'll understand what I'm talking about. They have those weather machines on the Blessed Isle, right? I can't remember. There's a bunch of different like machines on the Blessed Isle. I think you're right. There is weather machines. Or actually, I don't know about. Actually, I don't know about weather machines in second edition. Certainly in second edition, which is always my point of reference because it's like the one that I know the most lore about. But in second edition, they had they just like made lots of prayers to like various weather gods, and the weather gods would keep the the seasons in check and make sure that the Blessed Isle gets all of the like best crops and stuff. I don't know about any weather machines, but they definitely have things called heliograph towers, which are magical, basically magical telegrams, and it lets people communicate relatively quickly and cheaply with people on the other side of the Blessed Isle. Which again, if we're talking canonically, you were trying to talk to someone in Eagle's launch from the Imperial City, then that's about 3,000 or 4,000 miles away. So having the heliograph towers is a huge asset to the realm in terms of communications, and they're definitely a remnant from the first age. So yeah, the Imperial City. The human eye cannot ingest the full majesty of the Imperial City, built by the charms of the Exalted and the ingenuity of the realm's most talented architects. The buildings of the city are constructed from fragile but beautiful materials and reinforced with essence. The result is a looming, enormous, and ornate metropolis. Its palaces are carved of ostentatious jade and blind those who stare at them too long. Its tenements and shops are made from obsidian quarried from the Imperial Mountain. Its fortifications are of the mightiest granite, cut from the roots of the world by the mountain folk, and invulnerable even to sorcerous attacks. Interesting. Though that might just be flavor. It would be really funny if that's like mechanically true as well. The city itself was built atop and around the ruins of a first age city. The city itself was built atop and around the ruins of a first age city, a vast stockade made to resist barbarian attacks that savants have dubbed the Seats of Splendor. Despite its apparently military purpose, the Dragon of Earth, Pejap, taught the Exalted to use their charms to construct the great city and showed them what materials to use. Supposedly, the techniques taught by Pejap are still used on the new construction within the walls of the Imperial City. But the city's majestic design has since become claustrophobic. Economic opportunity brought peasant families that were unable to sustain themselves on the fruit of the land to seek employment. The result has been rapid and constant construction, threatening to spill beyond the limits of the walls. Architects now find more space by constructing buildings up instead of out. The fewer floors a building has, the older it is. The oldest temples are sprawling mazes of corridors and chambers, while the new ones are multi-tiered cathedrals with layers of balconies which resemble stadiums more than temples. Moreover, buildings must be raised wherever there is available room, which often means using the irregular spaces between older buildings. This, more than anything else, accounts for the snaking streets that suddenly turn and end, then resume half the city away. Five Talons Road, once the main artery of traffic, and one of the grand byways of the realm, is now only a few dozen broken sections interrupted by newer buildings. As more immigrants flood the city, the streets become narrower, the buildings higher, and the sprawl outside of the walls, the only real estate the poor can afford in the increasingly crowded city, grows unchecked. So I like this idea a lot, that they want to keep within the walls of the city, but they literally can't anymore, and so it's just kind of like spilling out. The one thing that I don't like about this is like this last paragraph kind of implies that they just built buildings in the middle of the road, which sounds really dumb to me. But yeah, I could probably do a whole video on the Imperial City, partly because my current game is set in it and I need to like properly formalize this idea of the layout. But I definitely like that the Imperial City is one of, if not the most vertical cities in creation. Yeah, I don't think that the Empress would let someone just build a building in the middle of the Five Talons Road. Like, that sounds horribly inconvenient. The perfected hierarchy. The Immaculates preach that there is a natural order to things, an order in which everyone has a place. The stratagem of society. An individual is born into a place where he belongs. These citizens can buy their way into nobility. Social mobility has little place in the realm. The Immaculate Philosophy, the state-mandated religion of the realm, holds that dragon-blooded are superior beings who have traveled farther down enlightenment's road. The law forbids citizens, peasants, slaves, and the disenfranchised from looking them directly in the eye. Even today, while no one worships the dynasts as deities, their advanced spirituality and frightening powers inspire awe among the people of the realm. Some citizens flock to any public ceremony that promises a glimpse of one of the dragon-blooded, while others will go to any lengths to avoid their exalted presence. Many peasants, rationalizing the fact that they could never afford to travel to the Imperial City, declare that they'll never visit a place so full of the terrifying dragon-blooded. Interesting. The Immaculate Pejap wrote in the Immaculate Texts that the nature has provided humanity with the perfected hierarchy. Since every rank of society fulfills a necessary role in the survival of all, no caste of the hierarchy is superior to any other. Though the dragon-blooded exist in greater harmony with their essence and are further along the road to enlightenment, they still cannot prosper without the other parts of society. For what use is a ruler without a nation, or a teacher without a class? The 11 Houses of the Scarlet Dynasty. During her centuries-long reign, the Empress had 4 husbands and dozens of lovers. Houses of the modern dynasty descend from the Empress's brood. These houses constitute the aristocracy that governs the realm. Once these dragon-blooded lineages lorded over their growing empire like enthroned gods. Since the Empress's disappearance, however, it seems as if the realm has begun to unravel at the seams. Although a regent oversees the realm and the Empress is absent, in reality each of the 11 houses wants to control the throne. What makes this struggle for supremacy more complicated is that the dragon-blooded may live for hundreds of years. The Empress lived a long time, even by exalted standards. She crowned herself almost 769 years ago. She gave birth to children with similarly long lifespans. Certainly, most imperial offspring are just normal humans, but those born of Exalted tend to rise to prominence and stay there for a century or two. The genealogies of such long-lived families are twisted, tedious, and given the incestuous tendencies of the dynasty, sometimes loop back onto themselves. Imagine an extended family of 10 generations, all coexisting at the same time and intermarrying with families of similar size. Now picture them all squabbling over the favor of a rich old matriarch who can give or take away that favor with a single word. Now imagine them fighting over the inheritance when she finally dies. If the Scarlet Throne were a hereditary honor, Rhaegar, the eldest surviving son of the Empress, would be crowned emperor. That's not the case, however. The realm has never before had a crisis of succession, so there's no precedent for the matter. And in the fine tradition of manipulative monarchs, the Empress never undermined her position by declaring a successor. Though all the houses are rather decadent and given to backstabbing and dirty deals, each has its own distinct character. The explanations below reflect the opinions the houses have on each other. In reality, the houses are made up of individuals with their own priorities, and the houses are more alike than their members want to believe. Also, some dynasts are the products of marriages between members of two houses. From these unions, children can side with one house or another, remain aloof, or play them off one another for the dynast's own gain. Aside from House Nellens, each house associates itself with an elementary aspect of one of the 5 dragons. In the early days of the Empire, most dragon-blooded dynasts emulated the dragons of their house's particular aspect. Now, however, a house's identification with a certain element is largely ceremonial. While a few individuals still maintain the hallowed ways, most dragon-blooded dynasts and outcasts alike emulate an immaculate of their choice rather than the one traditionally venerated by their bloodline. The 11 houses, with one exception, take the name of the child of the Empress from whom they descend. That's new. That's different. Or that's old, to be precise. In 2nd edition, at least 3 of the houses, I think it was Excelsi, Peleps, and Cathak, I think, were shogunate clans who sided with the Empress when she took over the Imperial Mans. And they gained, like, her respect and whatever. I think. I might be wrong, or I might be misremembering. Or that might just be, like, headcanon or something. But yeah, I mean, you said ew at the interbreeding. It doesn't surprise me. I mean, it makes sense. They want to keep their bloodline strong, and that's, like, way more important to them than, like, any minor qualms with a little bit of incest. In fact, I can even give an example from one of my games. One of my player characters, Sasis Kajak Somon, was a descendant of someone in House Summon and someone in House Sinus, and then he got married off to someone else in House Sinus, who was, like, niece of his mother, I think. Something like that. Anyway. So it's not that uncommon. It doesn't surprise me. And I don't think, like, yeah, I don't know. Doesn't bother me that much, at least. All right, so House Vanif. The youngest of the legitimate houses has had to find its power in places overlooked by the other houses. The head of the family, the 60-year-old exalted daughter of the Empress, spent most of her formative years overseeing the vineyards that service the imperial manse. Vanif used what she learned about the wine trade to make deals with patricians to buy out vineyards across the realm, and the guild to arrange for exclusive import licenses. But a few vineyards do not. Oh, but a few vineyards do not a Scarlet House make. The Venif also control the merchant navy that protects the traders in the Isles from pirates, enforces customs duties, and barricades ports that haven't paid the proper taxes. House Pelops, which controls the much larger Imperial Navy, recently saw their wine prices skyrocket after unsuccessful petition from the deliberative to grant the Pelops jurisdiction to hunt pirates in the inland sea. If this petition had become a decree, the sea dogs of House Venif would have lost one of their most important sources of income, the sale of ships and goods seized from pirates. House Venif has one last source of influence that might prove to be the most important as the struggle of the Scarlet Throne progresses. The Order of the Immaculate Dragons loves it. The family secured its loyalty in several ways. It bankrolled the construction of many new temples and scholarly expeditions into the Threshold. Also, when it seizes a pirate stash that contains any looted texts from the First Age, the Venif invariably donate them to the Order's library in the Imperial City. Finally, in those rare disputes in the deliberative that involve the Immaculates, House Venif always sides with the Order. House Regara. The Regaras descended from the Empress's eldest son and are the financial bulwark of the dynasty. When the other houses are short of funds, House Regara is always prepared to make a loan. The Regaras are in bed with the guild and have many ports in their debt. In the worst economy in the history of the realm, the Regara treasury still overflows. In the contest for the Scarlet Throne, the Regaras use their wealth to keep the other houses in their debt. They also enjoy considerable military power. If given enough time to hire mercenaries, see the Legion organization sidebar on page XX of this chapter. That's funny. The Regara's fortunes allow them to quickly commission soldiers for their talons or bribe lesser nobles to loan them their personal legions. Concerned over the reductions in the military, the Regaras have recently taken over the funding of 3 rapid response marine legions stationed on the Blessed Isle. This house has gained the most from the imperial system and has the most to lose if the tributary lords rebel against the empire. Benoba, son of Regara, speaks for the family on dynastic matters and is assumed to control the political interest of the house. Regara himself, one of the Empress's first offspring, is long retired and reported to be in bad health. Most of the family resides in the Imperial Manse, but Regara and some of his cronies live in the house's province in the Northern Isles. Rapid response marine legions, yeah. I kind of glossed over that. Where was that? Yeah. The Regaras have recently taken over a funding of 3 rapid response marine legions stationed on the Blessed Isle. That does sound pretty badass. House Sinus. Even in the decadent dynasty, House Sinus stands out as a hedonistic family. The Sinuses, more than the members of any other house, make sure everyone knows how rich they really are. The house is known for its wild orgies, which sometimes last for days. Members of this house exploit the wealth of their birth, affords them to squeeze out the most of life. Even their religious observances are known to be wine-drenched and carnal. House Sinus is the most deeply involved in the slave trade. Its members choose the best gladiators and concubines for themselves, then sell the rest on the auction block. The Sinuses' daily the Sinus' daily existence hinges on the exploitation of conquered peoples. A train of beautiful and exotic slaves usually accompanies a member of House Sinus. But with the economic turmoil of the Threshold and the realm have experienced lately, House Sinus now finds it's more expensive to buy slaves than it used to be. The house's profits margins are shrinking, And there are rumors that in order to maintain profitability, it's paying the guild in favors as well as jade. There are rumors of guild influence in the actions of Sinus courtiers, and guild hierarchs have finagled invitations to orgies that, by their place in the perfected hierarchy, they have no right to attend. If the Sinuses are inaccessible gods, their gods are, if the Sinuses are inaccessible gods, they are gods short on jade. Descended from an exalted daughter of the Empress, the family is also one of the most active in its struggle for the Scarlet Throne. It's launched more than one senatorial career with an outrageous orgy. While the behavior of some nobles and senators at the Sinus gatherings make excellent fodder for blackmail, the Sinuses guarantee that whatever occurs at their sorties stays there. This discretion puts them in an implied position of power over their guests and seems like a boon, even though the Sinuses haven't actually done anything. Most of the family resides in the Imperial Manse. This keeps them close to the action and provides the requisite grandeur for their entertainment. House Sinus produces a fair number of senators, but few generals. Rare members of the family, distinguished with hedonism, they grow up around, join the order. Those who do are usually among the most devout and literal emulators of the Immaculates. Yes, House Sinus are my favorite house as well. They're really hamming up the orgies thing in this description, though. In later editions, I think they tone that down a bit. Certainly, I get the impression from later editions that the Sinuses are much more meticulous. Like everything that they're doing for a reason. Obviously, they like a good party. There's nothing wrong with that. But their fingers in the pockets of the slave trade, like they have a monopoly on the slave trade in the Blessed Isle. And certainly in second edition, at least, they're strong competitors with the guild. They're not working with the guild. Yeah, they're more refined. Like there's a shrewdness to the Sinuses in second edition, which I really like. Well, actually, to just give an example, so I'm running Burning Wheel at the moment, as you probably know. And in Burning Wheel, you have cultural traits, which are like things that everyone from a particular culture has, and they come up in gameplay and stuff. And instead of doing cultures, I did the houses, and House Sinus's cultural traits are decadent, endowed, and shrewd, which like the first two speak for themselves, but the shrewd one is like more subtle and in my opinion speaks to like this much more like deliberateness to some of their actions. It's too easy to just look at the Sinuses and be like, they're the sex crazed house, they're the slavers, they're just evil assholes, or they're sodomists and decadent whatever. Like you can make lots of generalizations about them from like this description, whereas I think in second edition they're more nuanced. There's some subtlety that you can easily overlook, and that's why I like House Sinus, because it's very easy to like misconstrue what they really are. Anyway, weird tangent. House Sinus are definitely my favorite house, so I've thought a lot about them. Throughout the history of the dynasty, the Catholics have been generals, strategists, and military philosophers. This house believes strongly in the imperial system and believes that no force can possibly withstand the imperial legions indefinitely. If a Catholic emperor ever takes the Scarlet Throne, no doubt the legions would be restored to their former numbers, and the empire would expand under the conquering rule of House Catholic. The house's base lies within its legions. Beyond its private barracks, House Catholic bankrolls 5 of the realm's 30 standing legions. No other house besides Caestus controls that many. Catholic has considerable clout within the Order of the Immaculate Dragons because because many of the followers of the Immaculate Mela, Petitioner of the Clouds of Cloud. Oh God, it's one of these horrible long names. All right, let's do it justice. Once this car goes bust, Catholic has considerable clout within the Order of the Immaculate Dragons, because many of the followers of the Immaculate Mela, Petitioner of the Clouds, accordance to the call of battle, the Immaculate Path that most emphasizes martial strength, are related to this house. This veneration is a far cry from their historical association with the aspect of fire. Although the most belligerent of the houses, this is not to say that the Catholics sit around and plan conquests all day. They are skilled players at the games of the dynasty, since their control of so many legions invariably elevates them to prominent roles in the decisions of the realm. Catholic also produces a fair number of historians and savants, a mind bred for the challenges of war can sort through the other intellectual dilemmas just as well. While Catholic Canaan, titular elder of the house, wouldn't mind being emperor, House Catholic enjoys being kingmaker rather than king. With so much military strength, any serious contender for the Scarlet Throne must have its support. The Catholics prefer to have a definite role in any future government rather than risking everything by attempting to assume a lead role. That's another thing that I've just remembered about House Sinus in second edition, is they emphasize that House Sinus have this ambition for the throne, and they're working with House Casus strongly actually it might be here. All right, we might get to this when I read the bit on House Casus, but House Casus control the other part, like the other main part of the Legion, and so like House Sinus are bedding up with the Caesuses to try and gain political and military control. House Nellens is the spoiler house and pariah among the other families of the dynasty. The house has only an obscure claim to nobility as the children of the Empress's second consort, Nellens, from whom they take their name. They aren't related to the Empress by blood and claim only a handful of dragon-blooded, probably from a strain of lesser exalted nobility that married into the house somewhere in the distant past. The house appeared almost 200 years after the death of Nellens to petition for house status. The house appeared almost 200 years after the death of Nellens to petition for house stasis. It's uncertain why the Empress agreed to the family's complaint, perhaps some fond remembrance of her late consort, or secret initiative that made the breach of dynastic etiquette worth her while. Regardless, the two houses, directly descended from Nellens and the Empress, Casus and Ladal, despise these pretender nobles and work hardest to expel them from the ranks of the dynasty. The Empress's disappearance, however, since the Empress's disappearance, however, the other houses have begun a not-so-subtle push to remove Nellens from the dynasty. Nellens's representation in the deliberative shrinks yearly as the regent approves fewer of its candidates. While some families remain openly gracious when visited by members of this house, the Nellens are certain that any requests they make fall on deaf ears. In the dynasty, House Nellens has been described as a strangling weed. Apparently, it's a weed that's hard to kill. The problem with expelling House Nellens is that aside from the Regaras, it is the only house making money in the economic turmoil that has followed the Empress's disappearance. The Nellens' business acumen overcomes some of its disadvantages as a bastard house. At the instance of dragon-blooded At the insistence of the dragon-blooded general Cathek Tamet, no Nellens has ever served as a general of any imperial legion, although the spoiler house is wealthy enough to maintain its own standing garrison. While the dynasty resents it, Nellens is the most respected house among the patricians of the powerful but unblooded families, because it doesn't take such pains to demonstrate its superiority. If a rebellion of the lesser nobles ever takes place, there is a good chance that House Nellens will lead the charge. And in a time of disunion and insurgent nobility, a Nellens emperor might be just what the realm needs. Although the house is currently in a defensive posture, it continues to consolidate its wealth, private legions, and most of all, relationships with dissatisfied tributaries. Of all the houses that want the Scarlet Throne, the house with the weakest claim wants it the most. House Nellens is currently negotiating with Regara to occupy a wing of the Imperial Manse. For now, the family lives in Juche, a town at the foot of the Imperial Mountain. House Tepet. Once a powerful house with as many legions as the belligerent House Cathek. The Tepet legions were recently destroyed during a disastrous campaign to subdue a rogue noble who had been financing bandits near the border of the Scavenger Lands. The soldiers who survived would barely constitute a talon, while no house reigns preeminent among the 11. Tepet is clearly the weakest. Its former influence, based on military might, is now in ashes. Worse, the family's policy of maintaining troop morale by positioning the dragon-blooded Tepets at the head of a legion cost it many of its best and brightest young leaders. Until it can rebuild its decimated formations, House Tepet resembles an elderly wolf, fearing the day that its weakness shows and that it's eaten for slowing down the pack. The analogy is imperfect, of course. The other houses are well aware of Tepet's vulnerability. Wait. So, hang on, what? Let me just read that one more time. A once powerful house with many legions as belligerent as House Cathek, the Tepet legions were recently destroyed during a disastrous campaign to subdue a rogue noble who had been financing bandits near the borders of the Scavenger Lands. Not the Bull in the North, not a Solar trying to unite the Ice Walker tribes. Some noble in the Scavenger Lands managed to wipe out half of the Tepet legions. Okay. Sure. All right. Given the house's complete lack of ambitions beyond the military excellence and its limited power base, it collected no tribute beyond those of a few principalities in the east. It was regarded as neutral in the struggle for the Scarlet Throne. Therefore, during the weeks of debate that followed the Empress's disappearance, the deliberative appointed a Tepet as regent to oversee the realm in the Empress's absence. Regent Fokuf, the chosen Tepet, was a compromise candidate even within his own house, a mortal and great-great-great-great-grandson of the long-dead Tepet. Fokuf is given to certain peculiarities. He takes considerable pleasure in the words of the Immaculate Text and spends most of it there. This bit again. He takes considerable pleasure in the words of the Immaculate Texts and spends most of his day in his private chambers within the Imperial Manse. I spoke about this at the end of the last, or towards the end of the last reading of this, that I think they were more subtle with this in second edition about about Regent Fokuf. Though I didn't know he was mortal. That's interesting. Yeah, they definitely changed that in second edition with the Bull in the North. I think it's way better. Like, Bull in the North, that whole plot line is pretty interesting, whereas some guy in the Scavenger Lands bamboozled the whole of Tepet's legions, and now they're licking their wounds. Like, House Teppet isn't out to win the Scarlet Throne. It's in no position to do so. Its best hope is to hold the rudder steady on a ship of state until someone better suited to rule appears. The younger, greedier members of the family think House Nellens would ensure their fortunes through the older Teppet vigorously supporting the Regaras, seeing in that house the best chance for stability and a return to their own military authority, since a ruling Regara would probably seek to bolster the House of Teppet as a counterbalance to the might of the Catholic family. Again, there's I mean, they're like, there's no claim to the Scarlet Throne here. I feel like if they were gonna mention the Rose Black, they would do it there. And the Rose Black is definitely in first edition because she's right there in this picture of what is ostensibly the Imperial City. Rose Black Teppet Ajava is right there, so that's interesting. Or maybe in first edition, Teppet Ajava didn't have that ambition. I don't even know. Okay. House Nemon. Nemon produces more Immaculates than any other Scarlet House. Perhaps this is because it's so hard to gain prominence within the family. The Nemons descend from the Empress's eldest surviving daughter, who remains at the height of youthful beauty despite her almost 400 years. She sustains her unnatural lifespan by drawing upon the strength of the earth itself. Indeed, the Nemons are among the most magically talented of the dragon-blooded, and even those who don't leave to join the Immaculate Order dutifully emulate Pejap, the Earth of Dragon. Yeah, I think there's a lot in first. There's a lot of stuff in second edition that I've taken for granted, which I'm now finding out wasn't in first edition, which is good. It means they have actually added to the lore over the years. But it's just interesting to go back and see what's missing or what's changed. I mean, that's partly the whole reason that I'm doing this reading right now, is to find out what these differences are, just for personal curiosity. While the Nemons have fewer resources than some of the other houses, their skill at politics of the Empire keeps them in the contest. Besides Immaculates, House Nemon produces more than its fair share of merchants and generals. If Nemon herself ascended to the Scarlet Throne, her first decree, no doubt, would be to redouble the efforts against the 100 Gods heresy and relocate the center of the Immaculate worship within the walls of the Imperial City. She feels that House Excelsi is too close to the mouth of peace, and only by relocating the Order can she rescue it from the clutches of those pretenders. Nemon, who has watched most of her siblings grow old or die, remains the most prominent member of her family, a virtual goddess even within the dynasty, and occasionally appoints herself to the deliberative when convenient. She has already surpassed her siblings, most of whom weren't even dragon-blooded, and she won't allow their ill-begotten children to deny her what is clearly her right to rule. Nemon, with her long life and exalted acumen, is clearly the most like her mother, the Empress. Although the Nemons sponsors, although the what? Oh, although the Nemons sponsor no Imperial legions. Let me start that again. Although the Nemons sponsor no Imperial legions, the House maintains several legions of private troops, and their excellence at charms and sorcery gives them a great deal of leverage in the conduct of wars. The family's home is the Crystal Palace in the Imperial City. Ah, that's the first time I've seen that given a name. I always thought they were just given, like... I always thought they just had a wing to themselves in the Imperial Palace, but it seems like they've got their own little manse in the Imperial City as well. House Saesus seems to be among the best positioned to secure the Scarlet Throne. Since the disappearance of the Empress, it has assumed sponsorship of 5 Imperial legions and redoubled its own troop strength. Though its troops are not so well trained, they are numerous as those of House Catholic. Unfortunately, House Saesus's obviously excellent position to seize the throne is also a liability. All of the houses, Saesus is, or of all the houses, Saesus is the least liked and the most closely watched. Really? Saesus, not Nellens? Okay. The Saesus family has more than its fair share of dragon-blooded children, while members of other houses marry to suit their whims. Saesus prides itself as the best-bred family in the dynasty. The Saesus favor Nemons as mates, probably because of their high percentage of dragon-blooded births. They also favor Sinus for the house's commercial acumen. And so the three grow ever close through marriage after marriage. The Saesus enjoy the Sinus's taste for orgies as well as their talent for commercial success. The Saesus family penchant for orgy and unapologetic atheism combine in the ironically tilted Legion of Saints and Halloweds, a collection of slave concubines that service the nobility of the house. The Saesus occasionally gather in the brazen stronghold on the north wall of the imperial city for a night of pleasure with their concubines. Many Sinus and Venif regularly attend. The family resides in the port city of Eagle's Launch in the Palace of Burning Wind. God, that last paragraph was a mouthful. Also, that paints a very different picture about the Saesuses than second edition. I'm not even going to begin to dissect what's different there, but there's a lot. House Exalted. Long ago, a scandal involving an assassination attempt on the Empress forced House Exalted to evacuate the Imperial Manse. The family relocated to the Palace Sublime, the main temple of the Order of the Immaculate Dragons. Public boosters of the religion, the family is in fact the only Public boosters of the religion, the family is in fact only moderately devout. It exploited the Order's principle of sanctuary, and the Immaculates simply couldn't turn down the influence that comes with housing a dynastic family. Many Exalted join the Order, though this family also produces more than its fair share of outcasts. The older members of House Exalted rarely leave the Palace Sublime. When they do, they usually travel incognito. Though the offense happens almost 200 years ago, the charge could still be used by other houses seeking advantage in the contest for the Scarlet Throne as justification for destroying the family. Excuse me. That's not really necessary. House Exalted has done a splendid job of destroying itself. In its exile, the family has neglected its holdings. Many of the threshold lords who now trouble the dynasty were once the bailiwick of House Exalted. The family insisted that its tributes be maintained, but its absence from the deliberative is its distance from the imperial manse and its non-involvement in the military made its protection worthless. The only time an Exalted senator has spoken in the deliberative in the last 100 years was to oppose a forced relocation of the Order's mother temple to the imperial city. I don't know why that paragraph was so hard to read. I think some of the words, this line especially, or these two lines, are like really closely spaced. Like, this is almost one word. This whole line here is almost one word. Like, in the last 100 years was to oppose a forced relocation of the orders. Though that might just be this scan. Recently, House Excelsi has cultivated relationships with smaller provinces possessed of particularly religious populations on the Blessed Isle itself. These relationships have sustained the family's coffers. The family's leverage within the order allows it to dispatch immaculates to these oft overlooked areas, keeping the peasants quiescent and the local governance secure. From the Palace Sublime, a few of the elder Excelsi maintain their control of the realm's intelligence organizations, the All-Seeing Eye. This service, established by the Empress long ago, infiltrates the courts of the foreign lords and sometimes dynasts to watch for signs of insurrection. Its agents also pose as peasants to sabotage and divide rebellions among the inhabitants of the Blessed Isle. Although the All-Seeing Eye is nominally under control of House Tepet, interesting, the senior officers of the organization are Excelsi. Their loyalty to Excelsi is ironclad. The family lost everything in order to protect them from their what? Their loyalty to the Excelsi is ironclad. The family lost everything in order to protect them after they conspired to assassinate the Empress. This is a big difference. In second edition, they like downplayed House Excelsi a lot more. They were like, most of like Excelsi is a broken house in second edition, and like anyone who still like bears the name Excelsi, yeah, House Tepet. What? Yeah, anyone who bears the name Excelsi in second edition is like someone who House Excelsi doesn't care about. They're the idiot savants of the house, the people who they just like, yeah, whatever, they can do whatever they want. They can bring dishonor to our house. We don't care. The true House Excelsi don't actually take the name Excelsi anymore. They run the All-Seeing Eye from behind the shadows, and they were appointed there by the Empress herself. Like the Empress, like publicly ruined House Excelsi, and then privately funded them to like control the All-Seeing Eye. There's like much more subtlety there, and it's not public knowledge even among other dynasts that House Excelsi are actually as strong as they are. And so like anyone who's really from House Excelsi is like pretending to be in another house or something. Like, oh, I'm Nemon Giara or something, but really I'm an Excelsi spy in this house or whatever, which makes for much more interesting gameplay, I think. And then in third edition, House Excelsi is just completely gone. Like, like in third edition, there's 10 great houses, not 11. Excelsi is still there, but they ham up that secrecy even more, and House Excelsi hasn't just been publicly ruined. House Excelsi has been completely deposed. Yeah, and as a safeguard against other houses. Yeah, which makes Excelsi, like in the later editions, the most loyal house to the Empress. They tried to assassinate her, and the Empress was like, nope. And somehow that made them even more loyal to her. Like, or I can't remember if it was an assassination or a failed military coup, but I remember that it was prompted by a failed excursion in the Threshold. Like they tried to go and depose some duke in the Scavenger Lands, failed, miserably and then rebelled by trying to assassinate or depose the Empress, failed at that as well. And then the Empress ripped their house apart, kept the best spies, and put them in the all-seeing eye, which I think is just hilarious. Classic Empress. House Liddell. The Liddell family doesn't want the Scarlet Throne. Students of history, the Liddells know that being the figurehead of power in a fractured empire is more trouble than it's worth. They used to be very vocal about this indifference until the other houses decided that it was just a ruse and redoubled their surveillance of the Liddell family. That's hilarious. Now that the Liddells make token moves in the struggle, the occasional subtle advance to the other families think they're still in the contest. They hope these ploys are enough to satisfy the paranoia of their relatives. House Liddell has bigger problems to deal with. Liddell, the fourth child of the Empress, was raised by a sidereal tutor. Since then, the family has kept a contingent of sidereals to advise in matters of state. With the possible exception of the Casus, the Liddell family is the only one that fully understands the significance of the threat that the Death Lords pose. Their attempts to explain this danger to the other houses has been met with only with suspicion. The family knows that the other houses will not join in the crusade only when the Death Lords arrive at the gates of the Imperial City itself. House Liddell controls several large trading cities along the southern coast of the Blessed Isle, including Arjuf, largest port in the realm. It uses the tariffs and taxes of these busy ports to fund expeditions into the Threshold. The family seeks some ancient text that might reveal the true nature of the anathema. The anathema. The younger, more capricious members of the family attend the gladiatorial contests, the sinus orgies, and the backroom meetings of the deliberative to maintain the illusion of the monarchical ambition, while the elders of the family and their sidereal advisors prepare for the realm's last stand. This is not to say, however, that Liddell is filled with do-gooders and martyrs. It wants to preserve the empire that is its heritage. No other house so vigorously hunts down the anathema. I can't even remember what House Liddell did in second edition, but this is way more interesting. Like they have ties to the sidereals, like straight up. The elders of this house know some sidereals, which is, I don't think any of the houses in second edition are that closely linked with the sidereals. Now I'm really curious. I'm just going to check what the Liddells did in second edition. House Vergara, Casus, Tepet. I've gone too far. Nellens, Nemon, Liddell. Oh no, wait, okay. I guess I've just completely forgotten what House Liddell did. Yeah, okay, this is still in second edition as well, yeah. Liddell, the Empress's fourth child, raised by Chejop Kajak, of all people. Jesus. Liddell was powerfully shaped by what she learnt from her sidereal tutors. House Liddell is one of the few houses that realizes the enormity of the threat posed by the Death Lords. Liddell has consistently been run by a cabal of powerful, experienced exalts. For the last several hundred years, this cabal has included 4 dynasts who epitomize both the worldly and intellectual seeking for which House Liddell is known. Okay, wow, I guess my mind completely glossed over all of this stuff about Liddell in second edition. I don't know why. Although I'd say that what's written here in first edition is a bit more detailed. They're like, Ladal is building this facade that they're interested in the throne just to keep playing the power politics, but really, actually, the realm is in trouble. We need to do something about that. Paints a slightly different picture. House Pelops is largely responsible for the design, maintenance, and leadership of the Imperial Navy, a family descended from the Empress's second daughter and bearing a large number of water-aspected scions. House Pelops would doubtlessly be the strongest house, both militarily and financially, except for a Regara-backed decree from the deliberative that the family can have no role in sea trade, lest they develop a monopoly on the waters of the realm. The Pelops are coalition builders and masters of the deliberative. They don't take action until they know they have the votes to guarantee success. They've conspired with every family at one time or another, even the Regaras, who fear their military influence, and the Venith, who resent their efforts to usurp the inland sea trade. During scandals at festivals or moves in the deliberative, there's probably a Pelops in the middle of things. The family also has another source of power. Most of the judges of the imperial courts are Pelops. This gives the House Pelops broad interpretive power, as the courts decide on how to read the laws. Courts in the realm maintain no illusion of objectivity, and judges need not recluse themselves from decisions they have an interest in. Not only does this mean that the Pelops often have disputes resolved in favorable manners, it means they have an excellent view of precisely what is taking place in the legal system of the realm, far more than any other house. Pelops has an excellent perspective on which patrician families are prospering and which are on the rocks. It serves the Pelops well in making alliances and strategic marriages. The Pelops family lives on the Isle of Rak in the Northern Isles. This island also serves as the chief docks for the Imperial Navy. The Isle of Rak is not... I don't even know which island that would be in the north. Like, that's a name for an island on the Blessed Isle, or within the realm, that I am completely unfamiliar with, which is very surprising to me, because I drew the fucking map. It's not Tongma Island. It's not the Isle of Voices. There aren't many islands in the northern half of the Blessed Isle, unless it's one of the smaller ones, or unless I've misnamed one of them by accident. Man, the Isle of Rak. That's... I'll have to have a think about where that is. All right, before I read this next part, and I might gloss over some of this anyway, because this is probably very similar to what's in second edition in the Blessed Isle book, because this looks like it's going into like the social structures of the realm, which I can't imagine have changed that much. I'm gonna be right back, get another drink, stuff like that. So I'll only be about 5 minutes, probably. All right, I'm back. Sorry about the delay. So, no finding what that aisle. Yeah, me either. The only thing that I can think of, I was thinking about this while I was getting a drink, is there's an aisle to the. Actually, I'll just get the map up. There's an aisle to the west of Island, which on my map is called. Here we are. So this is my map. And yeah, to the west of Tongma Island. Scroll. So this is Tongma Island. This is where Port Wavehold is. The Wavehold prefecture, and I think there's 4 others on this island that don't have names. This island here, Chinjairu. Now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know where this name came from. And I can't think, like, most of these, like, almost all of these names have come from books. Like, that all of these names have a source somewhere. Chinjairu, I can't think what the source for that is off the top of my head, which maybe that means this is made up. Like, maybe I just copied it off another map without thinking about it. And so maybe this island here, maybe this is the island of Work, or Rack, the island of Rack. Maybe. That's the only candidate that I can think of. Unless Chinjairu is a canonical name, in which case I have no idea what the Isle of Rack is. All right, so outcasts. This is people. Yeah, this is the same. This is people who are born outside of the realm, outside of the dynasty, who live lives separate from the realm. These are the so-called outcasts. Oh, hey, look, it's the forest witches. This is a weird lot. Sometimes ousted lords and their former servants pillage side by side, although the quote-unquote forest witches, who operate mostly to the north of the scavenger lands, live dangerous lives. They've amassed wealth to rival some small kingdoms and provide a home to outcasts for any stratum of society. Oh, stratum. They've amassed wealth to rival some small kingdoms and provide a home to outcasts from any stratum of society. In a realm so concerned with rank and privilege, bands such as the Forest Witches enjoy the most egalitarian cultures around. Why worry about accent or taste when there's plenty of loot to go around? Is that all there is on the Forest Witches? Because in 2nd edition, the Forest Witches are fucking weird, to put it nicely. To the point where there's even a sidebar that's literally titled, "What the hell is all of this?" about the Forest Witches. Maybe that's a 2nd edition thing, or maybe these are talked about at a later date. Because I always thought, reading the stuff in 2nd edition about the Forest Witches, I always thought they were a carryover from 1st edition. That, like, the reason for that sidebar was we need to explain this just in case someone hasn't read first edition. They're like the Force Witches on Star Wars. I don't know what Force Witches are. I'm not a... My Star Wars lore isn't as good as my Exalted lore, I'm afraid. Anyway. Patricians, yep, these are the same. Deliberative, Greater Chamber and Lesser Chamber, yep, that's all the same. That's funny. The Empress designed the deliberative as a figurehead that maintained her power rather than undercutting it. She could propose any petition, and her sponsorship was often critical to the passage of the more controversial ones. She also had a veto that could be overturned by a nearly unanimous vote in both chambers. Nearly because the deliberative long ago approved the obtrusive naysayer rule. If only one senator votes in a way opposite to the rest of his fellows, the vote is still considered unanimous. Yeah, so this whole section is about like the crazy shit that the Empress did to keep her power, like having no fixed number of senators, which meant that she could just a load of people to pass laws if and when she wanted to, which I always found was quite funny. In fact, the whole thing about the Empress I find hilarious because her entire dynasty is built on the precedent that she is ruling it. And like as soon as she disappears, as soon as she's taken out of the picture, it is basically designed to crumble without her, which is just incredible. So I'm pretty sure that's what this whole section is just explaining. And then there's the Thousand Scales, the magistrates, who are the roaming judges and inquisitors. The All-Seeing Eye, the secret police, and sponsors of the World Hunt. And then the legions. Talking about the legions. The breaking down of things. Yep, legions contain 5,000 soldiers by regulation, though the actual complement is usually somewhat lower. Each legion has 10 dragons that consist of 500 soldiers each. A dragon is further divided into wings of 250 soldiers. Each wing contains 2 talons of 125 each, and each talon is further subdivided into 5 scales of 25 soldiers. Each scale can be broken down further into 5 five-man fangs, but fangs rarely operate alone. I really like this idea because it's also, well, with the exception of when it shifts, it's initially base 5 counting. And I'm a mathematician, so I always like different bases for numbers. But yeah, it's like 1 to 5, and then 1 to 25, and then 1 to 125. Ostensibly, the next one should be 625, and then like what 3,000 and something. But yeah, no, that's way too high. Whatever 625 squared is, but but yeah, and then it's like 125 and then 250, and they break the chain. I've like my headcanon is that it should be 625, just to keep that little flavor of like base 5 counting. Because then that also means that like when you're counting out currency, it's just like extra flavor and stuff. But like when you're counting out currency, you can be like, a talon of jade. No, wait. No, a talent. Talent is different, isn't it? There's talents of jade, and there's a talon of soldiers. But you could be like, I have, like if you're talking in game, and you want to be more immersive, then you could say like, I have a talon of obols, jade obols or something. I don't know. This is a weird tangent. uh, although it does align with the official High Realm. Yeah, that's a really cool picture. It's like the Imperial Legion and like some fire aspect with her anima glowing and a huge diclave. Yeah, I like that. Fighting some shit-eating barbarians. Yeah, I completely lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, in the Imperial, in High Realm script, a like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is dots, like up to 4, I think. So it's like 1 dot, 2 dot, 3 dot, 4 dots, and then 5 is like a big dot, like a circle, I think, or it might be a slash for 5, and then you get 5 slashes, aka 5 fangs, and you get a scale, and then 5 scales is a talon, 5 talons. Yeah, it feels to me like 5 talons should be its own thing, but then I guess that breaks the idea of like 2 talons in a wing, because there's each wing has a claw on it which has talons, and then 2 or into, yeah, and then 2 wings to a dragon. So I guess it makes more like visual. If you're thinking of it as a dragon, then it makes more sense to be like, yeah, there's 2 talons to a wing, 2 wings to a dragon. But the base 5 counting part of me wants to be like 5 wings in a something else, and then 5 of those in whatever comes next. Like five five 5 talons to a wing, 5 wings to a dragon. Like that's what my brain wants to do. But that doesn't make any visual sense. Okay, anyway. Vermilion Legion. Oh, Vermilion Legion. Hey. That's a thing that that should mention Tepa to Java. Nope. No Tepa to Java here. Yeah, they are. That's a good point. Also, like the 5 terminology makes, I mean, I don't know. My definition of a dragon is much more loose. I'm like anything elemental. You know, there's 5 of them. Yeah, I don't know. Just like 5. There's a 5ness to the realm, to like the whole culture, like the Immaculate Philosophy, the 5 elements, 5 elemental dragons, 5 immaculate dragons, 5 terrestrial directions. There's a 5ness to everything that the realm does, so it just makes sense to me, like thematically, that they would use a base 5 counting system as well. Yeah, I don't know. All right, then there's peasantry and citizens, and this is the same. Slaves. About 1 in 5 people in the realm is a slave. That's an interesting demographic. I don't think we've had that mentioned in later editions. Slaves are employed for a variety of tasks. Anything that requires intelligence of a human but involves the inhumane treatment is appropriate for slave labor. Slaves do everything from the grunt work of mining and construction to relatively more pleasant tasks of attending lords and dynasts, and of course, sex slaves. Wait, am I missing it, or is it a later thing? Or maybe they just don't mention it. Certainly in later editions, they make an emphasis on this idea that, like, if you are a born and bred citizen of the realm, then you can never be made into a slave. Like, all of the slaves in the realm are imported. Which I think is an important thing to note. And I think there's also like an interesting facet to the whole slaves in the realm thing, which parallels ancient Rome and stuff like that, where like the slaves are kind of like background objects. The HBO/BBC series Rome, I'm watching that right now, and they handle it really well, where there's like slaves in the background of almost every scene, but the way that they're treated both by the actors and just the like screening and like blocking of scenes and stuff always positions the slaves as background objects. And there's few occasions where like the slaves are actually characters of their own. And even when they are, like, the way that they're treated is like an extension of the there's one that I'm thinking of in particular. I've forgotten his name, which is appropriate given that he's a slave. But the main slave of Gaius Julius Caesar in that show, his role, like, he's got a really cool character. Like, the actor that plays him is like plays it really well. But the way that he's written and the way that Julius interacts with him is almost like he's an extension of Julius's own mind, right? Like Julius will talk to this slave and like bounce ideas off him and like get his opinions on stuff and consult him for like not he won't consult him for like military decisions and stuff, but he'll consult this slave for political decisions. He'll consult this slave for like calculating things and doing like numerics and stuff that like he can't be bothered doing. And it's so interesting to me that this is it's a completely new way of or it's not new, but like, to me, seeing this, it's like a new way of thinking about how to include slaves in your game if you're running Exalted, is to make them like the personal slave of a dynast would be almost an extension of that person's body, right? Like they are completely loyal and they do all of the shit that the dynast doesn't have time to do, including thinking certain thoughts. It's just like, it blows my mind. It's so interesting to me that like that's such an interesting way of thinking about slaves. And like HBO like nailed it on the head. Like I thoroughly recommend that you watch that series if you haven't. Like, it's so, just for like evocative, inspirational material for running Exalted, if you're running a game in the realm, or if you want to involve like believable dynasts, like just, and it's not just the slaves, like there's other stuff in that show that is very resonant with realm politics and stuff. In fact, I think in third edition it's even in like recommended viewing. Like the start of the Exalted third edition, there's a bit where they're like, watch Rome. Rome is really good. Yeah. The Order of the Immaculate Dragons, I imagine this is very much the same. This is talking about how the dynasts are spiritually heightened above the peasants, and it's on the road to blah 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 and reincarnation and blah blah blah. Teaching mortals or indoctrinating mortals of the realm that their place in the world is righteous and just, and if they don't worship gods and do other silly stuff, then they too will one day be exalted. Although scanning this seems to be more about the politics of the order. Or the hierarchy even. Yeah, this is the Mouth of Peace, basically the Pope, and then the 5 Immaculate Paragons, who are like the best at emulating the 5 dragons. And those dragon-blooded who present themselves to the Paragon of Sextus Gilus at the Palace Sublime take their first steps on the path of the Immaculates. After a brief stint as an acolyte, the aspirant chooses which of the 5 Immaculate Dragons she will emulate. Excuse me. After this choice, she is ceremoniously confirmed as a member of the Order. This is different, actually. In second edition, you still have to present yourself to Sextus Gilus, but it's not at the Palace Sublime. It's at the Procession of Grey, which is in the Imperial City, and you have to prostrate yourself outside of the Procession of Grey until you are chosen to be worthy by Sextus Gilus. And so Sextus Gilus is the only, or the paragon of Sextus Gilus, I should say, is the only paragon of the Immaculate Dragons who's stationed in the Imperial City rather than the Palace Sublime. And then once you're chosen at the Procession of Grey, you are tonsured and given like food and stuff, and then you can make a pilgrimage to the Cloister of Wisdom, whereupon you become a proper Immaculate. So the whole process is like much longer and more complicated in second edition, certainly. And anyone can do it. Any mortal can go and prostrate themselves at the Procession of Grey. And I think they're looked after. Like, you don't have to starve yourself, but you're given like a minimal meal of like just rice, and you're like, you can sleep on like a bed, like a straw mat or something. And being the really funny thing to me is that being a dynast doesn't guarantee that you will be chosen. And sometimes there is cases of like people who, like dynasts, who had to go and humble themselves at the Procession of Grey for months at a time, like months and months and months of just like the same day going, bowing at the Procession of Grey for like all day, sleeping on a mat, eating some rice, repeat for months before before the Paragon of Sextus Gilus might choose them. and let them properly join the order, which I think is, yeah, really funny and also possibly intentional to like really make the Dynas think about their life choices. It's really involved for a fake religion. I don't know. The religion is obviously real. um, like, or within the fiction. Uh, there's like a deliberate nature to the Immaculate Order. Like, it's not um yeah, it's unlike, I don't really think there's a um I don't think there's really a real world analog um of the Immaculate Order. The closest thing thematically is, I guess, Buddhism, or Buddhism, however you pronounce that religion. But even then, that's just thematically. Like, the actual content of the religion is pretty unique as far as I can tell, um, which I find very interesting. Uh, like, they obviously put a lot of thought into how the whole thing works, which I always appreciate. You know, it's not just, yeah. I mean, there's what is this? This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and a bit pages in the core rulebook devoted to the explaining this one religion. Yeah, I know you're joking. I know you're joking, but like, compare this to something like D&D, where there's a whole pantheon of gods, and each one gets maybe a paragraph devoted to it, and then you're supposed to, like, as a GM, you're supposed to work out how every single one of these like 20 churches operates. Um, are they all like? And that's the thing, is like, you've got this whole pantheon of gods in D&D. Do all of them, like, you have to do so much of the work as a GM to in D&D or something like that, to like decide how every god is going to operate. And I know there are like expansions and stuff, and I'm going off 3rd edition. Maybe they get more space in 5th edition, but yeah, I don't know. Just like they put a lot of thought into the Immaculate Order. Um, like, they want to give the GM like a lot of information to build off of, to make it believable. Whereas I can't get attached to like the Church of Serenray and the Church of uh, what's another god in D&D? I can't even remember. It's been so long since I played D&D. But they're all churches, is my point. Like, what about the Mosque of Serenray or the Temple of whatever? I don't know. It's like a lot. What I guess what I'm saying is, like, a lot of fictional religions, uh, in other role playing systems, seem to just be Christianity by proxy. Um, and maybe they have some different customs. Uh, maybe they pray in a special way, and the gods are real. Obviously, that's a big difference between the real world. uh, but in this is just like, there's so much thought put into this, and it's the yeah. I don't know. and and then to top it all off, there are real gods. There is this whole much larger pantheon of gods in the world of Exalted that are real and that actually answer prayers and that like want attention and devotion. And this whole religion is predicated on the idea of like, no, you must emulate the immaculate dragons, you must not worship the gods, you must be good and faithful and walk on the path to enlightenment, and we'll deal with the gods. You just let us deal with the gods. Like it's so much more interesting to me than just like the Church of Sarenrae. Stroke your magical amulet and talk to Sarenrae and get healing. Like, no. You must prostrate yourself in the procession of grey for months until you are chosen by the paragon of Sextus Giles, whereupon you make pilgrimage to the Cloister of Wisdom or the Palace Sublime, I can't remember which, and then finally you may join this religion properly and appropriately. Like, it's so much more involved. Makes it so much more believable. I'm rambling. Heresies and cabals. As the state religion in the realm, the Order of the Immaculate Dragons has an interest in surpassing rival faiths. After all, those who do not heed to the path of virtue are forever cut off from the ultimate exaltation. See what I mean? The Order of the Immaculate Dragons regularly sends Immaculates to the regions suspected of heresy. If the problem is easily taken care of or best kept quiet, then these investigating Immaculates destroy all ritual components of the worship, exclude the priests or leaders, then kill those heretics they can't re-educate. In the case of larger heresies, the investigating Immaculates report back to the paragons, who then advise the Mouth of Peace. From there, the Mouth of Peace advises the dynasty of the course of action to be taken to eliminate the problem. Do you think the gods know the Immaculate Philosophy was created by the sidereals? I think some of them do. Certainly the Unconquered Sun, like the big incarnates, obviously do. I think that actually no, I remember there's something about this written in one of the Compass of Celestial Directions, where they talk about how the gods will... Actually, it might be in the Blessed Isle book, which I have open in another tab already because I was reading it earlier. Certainly, a lot of the gods who have spheres of influence within the Blessed Isle know better than to disobey the Immaculate Philosophy. Like, there's a bit where they talk about like gods who like end up being worshipped by like random people on the Blessed Isle who aren't Immaculates will report these people to actual Immaculates. Like, the gods know better than to accept worship that is unsupported by the Immaculate Faith, because they'll get shat on all over by some badass monk. But as for whether they know it was sidereals, I don't know enough about the gods to properly answer that question. I don't like the sidereals are so such an enigma to me. Even like, I should probably read it. I think I will read one of the sidereal books next after I'm done with first edition core, because there's so much that I don't know about the sidereals, and one of them is actually that question itself. Like, how much do the gods know about the sidereals? let alone mortals, let alone the Immaculates. It's like the deal from the New Gods to the Old Gods in the American Gods book TV show. I haven't read that either, though I've heard it's good. Wait, am I thinking of the same thing? No, I'm thinking of Bad Omens. But they're both written by Neil Gaiman, aren't they? I need to read more Gaiman. I hear he's pretty good. Car. 100 Gods Heresy isn't one of faith, but a collective term for the cults in the realm that worship the natural spirits that pervade the land. These cults usually base themselves on older pagan religions, common in ancient past or remote regions near the Threshold or Weald. While the Order of the Immaculate Dragons recognizes the existence of these spirits, it considers them to be spiritual functionaries who are distracted from their duties by worship and prayer. Members of the Order give ritual thanks to the spirits on appropriate holidays, and this, which is no more and no less than the dragons decreed proper, is what should be given. Every city and many of the villages of the realm have cults devoted to some local deity. Sometimes entire communities display the trappings of the Immaculate Faith, but in reality worship older gods. In the Threshold, matters are different. While all tributaries pay lip service to the imperial cult, the decree to which the inhabitants of a given kingdom actually honor the faith varies wildly. In some places, belief is sincere, while in others, people merely smile and nod while the missionaries and magistrates depart. Yeah, that's interesting. So in second edition, the Immaculate Philosophy is a bit more widespread, I think. Like, the 100 Gods Heresy is more of a threshold thing in second edition, whereas here it's pervading the idea that it's more of a realm thing, and then anything outside of the realm is just like outside of the realm. Whereas in second edition, it's like Immaculate Philosophy is pretty much 100% widespread across the realm. On the Blessed Isle and in the satrapies, I think. And then the 100 Gods Heresy is the collective term used for illicit god worship outside of the Immaculate Order, but it's also stuff that they don't really have control over, I think. Certainly they're quicker to knuckle down on heresies within the realm in second edition than they're making out they are in first. Though I might just be inferring too much here. In the Threshold, there are those who still remember the faiths of the First Age. Indeed, there are echoes of these faiths, even in the liturgy of the Immaculate Order, with its veneration of Gaia as the All-Mother. Though these faiths are officially heresy, their faint memories are as common as the 100 Gods heresy and little persecuted. Only in their full forms as religions are they considered dangerous and hunted by the Immaculates. The Unconquered Sun is the god who first suggested to overthrow the primordials, and it was he who led the Celestines to victory. Though the Maiden of Battle is his match in single combat, none can match the Unconquered Sun as a strategist and a leader. The Unconquered Sun is typically depicted as a clean-shaven, androgynously handsome, four-armed male wearing bronze armor and carrying a lance, a shining shield, a laurel branch, and a horn. After the murder of the Solar Exalted, all of the Unconquered Sun's many temples were pulled down or remodeled into temples to the elemental dragons. Today, almost no inhabitants of the realm outside of scholars even know that there is such a deity, and his worship continues only in small, isolated communities in the Threshold. Gaia, the god of the world as a whole, Gaia is a primordial, equal to or perhaps greater than the gods of the various planets, and sometimes called the Maiden of Plenty. Gaia is venerated abstractly by the Immaculates as the source of all life, though many offer her prayers of thanksgiving, few ask for her intercession. Though she is benevolent, Gaia is as distant as the Celestines. Gaia's compassion for life is boundless. During the war against the primordials, it was she who stayed the gods from the murder of those primordials who surrendered. Gaia's companion in Kana, Luna, is not a Celestine, but might as well be from the amount of power her consort has delegated to her. Many-faced, cunning, and perhaps mad, Luna is a trickster and shapeshifter without compare. During the war against the primordials, she advised the unconquered sun on battle stratagems. Luna is said to have a very distant relationship with her Exalted, asking little and offering less. Which is like the exact opposite of Luna in of how Luna is presented in third edition. In third edition, Luna, I believe, personally talks to everyone that she exalts, I think. Whereas the Solars, it's only the Twilight cast, typically, who get to talk to the unconquered sun before they're exalted. Whereas here in first edition, they're painting Luna as like very distant and non-caring, which is different. Also, this line is interesting to me. Gaia is a primordial equal to or perhaps greater than the gods of the planets. Which means, like, implicitly, that means that that Gaia, a primordial, is less powerful than one of the gods that another primordial created. Oh, it's Zenith, not Twilight. Yeah, you're right. Which just makes me question all sorts of things about like the power level of various primordials versus various incarnae. I've always thought of the incarnate, like even the incarnae are subordinate in power level to the various primordials in my mind. So like Gaia being the only surviving primordial who's not imprisoned or exiled themselves. I've always thought of Gaia as being the most powerful being in the universe, but she doesn't care anymore. But it seems here that Gaia is actually weaker than the unconquered sun. She's made weak because she is like the world. Yeah, that's true, actually. That's probably a good way of thinking about it. I think in second edition, they talk about Gaia as being like the body of the world, and the 5 immaculate dragons they aren't just gods. Well, they're not gods, they're elementals, but like they make up creation itself, but they are also a part of Gaia, and so Gaia is weakened by the existence of the elemental dragons. Something like that. Yeah, I think that makes more sense to me, actually. Though I would still say like Gaia has got to be pretty powerful to like hold all of that together, and still pay attention to like political, bureaucratic bullshit happening in heaven. Or playing the games of divinity, or whatever they're called. All right, so threshold. This is a long section. This is like all of the 4 remaining cardinal directions. And the World. And then Shadowlands. And Fairfolk. And Behemoths. Okay, so, and then that's the end of the chapter. Okay, so maybe this is going to be 3 parts, not 2. Because my voice is getting wrecked. So, and keeping Luna happy, yes. Yes. I can't imagine there's a huge amount that's different. Then again, maybe there is. Because there's new stuff, there's new towns, there's new locations added in 3rd edition. Motorbike. God, that is a... Okay, now that that's passed. Yeah, so there's new stuff in 3rd edition in terms of locations. There's all of the stuff in the from 2nd edition that I remember, but there may be some new stuff or old stuff here which didn't make it into 2nd edition. So I think I'll have a proper scan of this in my own time to like try and see if there's anything new or old that's not in later editions. And if there is, then I'll do a proper reading of this stuff. But if there isn't, then this is the 2nd and final part of my reading of 1st edition core. So yeah, I think I'm going to leave the live stream there. Weird and Quirky, thank you for joining me. I think you've been the only consistent viewer for this whole live stream. So thank you. Yeah, I think I'll leave the stream there. If you're watching on the VOD, thank you for making it this far, and see you next time.